This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we'll summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this year. Today is the 24th of December, 2019, and I am DM.
I am Tom.
And I am GK. So as we look at what we reviewed this year, we want to look into the second quarter of 2019.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at between April and sort of June.
Yes.
What was hot? What was going on?
I think we can start in May.
Yes.
Smack in the middle of May, DCI Kinoti launched a very complex operation to nab people that were sinning in terms of tax.
Not paying their taxes.
Yes, tax evaders and people
Yes.
were committing tax fraud.
Yes.
So this was just the beginning, and I think it started within KRA itself. Remember, he actually launched a group of spies.
Yes.
I know, I heard that.
To tell on the internal people, and it was a successful one because I don't know how many people, 70? Was it 70?
It was 70 people.
In fact, on this table, we're asking who is left at KRA to work.
Exactly.
at that time.
And also, who wants to work in such an institution where, you know, spies can be deployed amongst you? What does it say about the culture?
Yes, and we also know now that that was just the beginning of an operation that led to some very major arrests later on in the year. And I think we'll look at that in the next quarter that we'll discuss tomorrow.
But everyone that has actually improved, and probably I have been unfair, and maybe some of you to him, is DCI Kinoti.
I think only you have been unfair.
No,
you gave him a hammering this year.
This man has really gone under, and he's letting the system work itself. He's not appearing in press conferences, and you know, the man is just doing his job quietly. And I think it's good to give credit where it's due.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next part, I think we went into the gold saga. This is when we started seeing sheikhs and all sorts of people complaining.
What a country.
Yes, Sheikh of Dubai, Sheikh Al Maktoum, sent his nephew to Kenya to complain about a gold consignment of about 23 tons that he had been swindled. And one of the actors in that alleged, I want to be very specific, alleged actors was Moses Wetangula. Now, the scheme was this: they were to get some gold from DRC. The goal was to transit through Kenya and then find its way to Dubai. And somewhere then, DCI Kinoti had an operation where they found fake gold, some in padlocks, in boxes in a house in Kidaleshwa.
So they were melted tricycle padlocks.
Absolutely.
Kenyans are so entrepreneurial.
You know, and this thing actually roped in the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. And also,
remember the phone call?
Yes, and Uhuru Kenyatta. And there is a phone recording, an alleged phone recording of Moses Wetangula. And he seems to be talking to this guy called Alizandi, who's a nephew of the Sheikh, demanding for his gold to be returned. That thing went quiet. The government of Dubai, the royal family of Dubai said there's nothing like that happening. I think it was more of an embarrassment to them.
And that's why they didn't formally make a complaint. That's why they were trying to call in favors and high places to get what was theirs.
So that story died a natural death, and we've never heard about it since.
And the DCI could not act because there was no complainant.
Formal complaint.
And I remember he had said he's going to interrogate.
I remember there were also a few very funny cartoons that came along in this time, making fun of the whole saga. And then we went to Waititu, if I remember correctly, the beginnings of his problems.
Yes, his wars began on I think it was the 31st, the last day of May, when they began probing him and his family.
His daughter and wife.
His daughter and his wife. They had this company called MS Testimony Enterprises Limited that had been contracted unlawfully to construct roads and other things. So they were charged for 51.2 million or loss of 51.2 million of government money. But that was just the beginning. But it wasn't until July that he was actually arrested. He surrendered himself. Well, they went to look for him in his house.
Was it as dramatic as Sonko?
They camped there. He wasn't there.
Oh, he wasn't there.
They camped there all day. He wasn't there. But he did surrender to the EACC the next day, and he was brought before a judge. But you must remember also that this was hot on the heels of Judge Mumbi Ngugi's landmark ruling, where she ruled that this was following an application by Samburu Governor Moses Lonkulal, who had been barred by a lower court from accessing his office. But Judge Ngugi sustained that ruling, which changed things for governor. So up to today, Waitutu's deputy, I don't remember his name.
James
Nyoro. He's sitting in the State House of Kiambu today.
Better enjoy it while it lasts. And then we also had in the month of May the Somalia-Kenya maritime dispute. And so it's been in the news ever since, but the area under dispute is about 100,000 square kilometers of sea territory that has oil and gas deposits.
Absolutely.
And it's come under contention because in 2014, Somalia goes before the International Court of Justice and puts its appeal forward. So Somalia feels that its border should go this way, it should follow from the land border, whereas Kenya feels it should be parallel.
Horizontal,
right? And they both have valid claims because Kenya has held that border for a very long time.
Absolutely.
Somalia has not had an issue since. But all of a sudden, 2014, they get their act together and they take us to the ICJ. There have been two crucial meetings since then. In Unga, Farmer Joe and President Kenyatta meet in New York, and they're mediated by General Sisi, the president of Egypt. That didn't go well because Farmer Joe still decided he wasn't going to pull out. But recently, they've met again in Nairobi. They've at least agreed to sort of have a ceasefire. The courts they did ask for delay. So Kenya fired 6 of its lawyers in September. So
clever tactic.
They've delayed the case basically till January 2020, of which we go back to the ICJ. But the plan, I think, in the meantime, is to sort of see if we can work things out.
I mean, this case has been really up and down. At some point, Kenya was diplomatically arm twisting Somalia because Kenya also felt that Somalia was acting in bad faith because there's a time that they were thought to be actually auctioning some oil blocks
in Europe, in London.
In London, So,
and you know what? Historically, even countries such as the US and China have ignored ICJ rulings. So I think next year, 2020, is something to watch out for. Because should Kenya ignore an ICJ ruling that is not in our favor, that sees us lose our territory, what happens to the relations between these two countries?
So remember, we're also in this case grudgingly because the president of the ICJ is Somali. Somalia.
Exactly.
And they may be, what did you call what Markamen is doing? Conflict of interest.
But the good thing is this.
As GK calls him.
But the good thing is this. I think the relations have sort of come back to normal. We saw the first KQ plane flying, I think, from Mogadishu back to Nairobi. I think now we're starting to see normalities. And two brothers should not fight, which is good news.
Which is good news for us.
We need not fight over some fish.
All right. And then later in the month, I think we moved to June, we have FBI plots, assassination claims. It was wild. And it filled our news for weeks.
Let me tell you, for me, this is the headline of the year because it's inconceivable that cabinet ministers would show up at DCI and say that none other than the deputy president called DCI Kinoti and said that there was a plot on his life. There was a plot to assassinate him, which was hatched at Lamada Hotel. Now, and I
can picture them. They're all sitting in that meeting.
Can you imagine?
Someone is taking
minutes.
How shall we do it?
There were 12 ministers with assistant ministers and PSAs who showed up, and they all went to plot an assassination. Well, look, it is such a dumb thing to say. But at the same time, for ministers to come out and actually go and say that their immediate boss is planning to kill, there's an assassination plot on him, and those people that went to appear in front of cameras are the ones that are said to go to kill him, then that was telling me there was a rift in cabinet, that there was a rift in the executive.
A big one. And then thereafter you also see RUTO in meetings with his supposed
plot killer. Assassinators.
The person who was writing the agenda saying, this is how we will do it.
But what we can say, I think, is that the RUTO assassination plot really captured the imagination of Kenyans.
It really did. And I suppose, well, it's not a good story, but the way the media packaged it, put it out there, it's still being referenced until today. Perhaps we're in agreement that one takes the
it takes it
news coverage.
And look, last week you had the governor of Machakos, Alfred Mutua, showing up to say that no, Deputy President William Ruto has threatened him, and he probably is even threatening to take his life.
His handshake was too far.
So how things come full circle is also very intriguing.
Interesting, intriguing.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we can give it to Ruto and the coverage that he got.
Yes.
With the assassination and
FBI and all that.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
There we go. And what is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book we've done here before again. It's called Shoe Dog by a man called Phil Knight. You like this book, you?
I think it's my favorite.
It's your favorite book?
Yeah.
This year or in your life?
This year.
Nice.
I can't commit to my life.
It is a very good book, and it's a memoir by the creator of Nike or Nike,
depending on where you're from.
By Phil Knight.
Yeah.
So a shoe dog, the definition of a shoe dog, it's a colloquial term. A dog is a person who is really inspired and really gets into something that they love. And so the creator of Nike, the writer of this book, calls himself a shoe dog.
Yes.
He really loves shoes, and he really got into the business of shoes. It actually defined his life. So Phil Knight was 24 years old, and he had just returned home from doing his master's degree at Stanford University, very prestigious, and serving in the U.S. Army for 1 year. So the year is 1962, and he's really fixated on something that he calls the crazy idea. He keeps referring to it as the crazy idea, and it's based on a project that he did in school in Stanford, which started as an everyday assignment, and then it became a complete obsession to him. So in this book, he says that he looked at how Japanese cameras had taken over the camera industry, which had previously been dominated by the Germans. And so his logic was, if the Japanese dominated an industry they knew nothing about, then he can also apply the same logic to his passion, shoes. And he said, who therefore can make the best running shoes? The Japanese. So he made it his quest to find out how and do it himself. But the book also shows us how he had such tenacity. He was a very tenacious guy. For this reason, there are about 5 things that started wrong. Thing number 1. Even as he was doing this assignment at Stanford, and he made the presentation about the crazy idea to his classmates, it was received very badly. People were just sighing, and there were vacant looks in their eyes.
There was no inspiration.
There was no inspiration, and nobody asked questions afterwards. Then the second thing is that, of course, he was a student and he had no capital. So he asked his dad. This is a tough word today. He requested his dad for funding. But his dad was a very traditional conservative guy, and the crazy idea did not appeal to him. So he was risk averse, did not get on board quickly. And then the third thing is that there's just a general historical bias against the Chinese by the Americans. If you remember, they were at war.
The Japanese.
They were at war together. In fact, his grandmother told him, don't you remember the Japanese tried to take over the world? They're going to kill you and gorge out your eyes. And so he had no encouragement from his family. And then lastly, this is in the 60s and in the 70s when he was getting into this venture. Running was not as popular as it is today or as normal. You wouldn't see somebody just running down the street for leisure or for exercise. So he was trying to get into a business that was really virgin, for lack of a better word.
Fantastic.
And so eventually he does go to Japan. And goes to this company called Onitsuka, and he convinces them to partner with him in the US. So he returns home in 1963 after sending a message to his dad, who kindly sent him $50 to buy a box of shoes.
Thank God for the Bank of Dad.
The Bank of Dad, the
Treasury.
The ATM. So he goes back to America. This is in 1963, expecting the box of shoes to have arrived, but it didn't. At this point, he thought, you know what, maybe it's not going to happen. I'll just go back to school and become an accountant. But then 1 year later, in 1964, the box of shoes finally arrives and just reignites the passion that had been in him all this time. And so begins the journey of Nike. So in that first year, he made sales of about $8,000. 1968, $15,000.
Yes.
1969, $300,000. 1971, $1.3 million. That's a lot of money in 1971.
Yeah.
And today, in 2019, 11.8 billion
US dollars.
This is a guy who faced a lot of adversity, but ended up creating one of the biggest companies in the globe.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And I just want to go back to Japan.
Yes.
And I say this is the place where I met this guy. And you know, this guy had sheer guts and confidence. And I say 50% of everything you do is confidence. So he goes, 1962, he enters this company in Japan. It's called Onitsuka. Onitsuka. And there are 4 executives who meet him. And they meet him at the lobby and they take him to the boardroom and they treat him with so much respect and they keep bowing like this. They see him and they say, this is sit there, that is the seat of the honored, and he sits there. And as about to make his speech, one of the Japanese executives asks him, Mr. Smith, what is the name of your company?
Mr. Knight?
Mr. Knight. Sorry, why am I thinking Smith? Mr. Knight.
One of your friends.
So, Mr. Knight, what's the name of your company? So, the guy sits back, he's like, oh, I had not thought of that. So he thinks back at home. He thinks of his trophy shelf and all that, and his medals, that the one he's won around the track. And he thinks, oh, all of those trophies have blue ribbons. So he says, the name of the company is Blue Ribbon Sports of Portland, Oregon.
Wow. He made it up on the spot.
He made it up on the spot.
Imagine if those were the names of Nike shoes today.
Can you imagine? So his company name is called Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
And then he goes ahead and he gives us the pitch. And he says, guys, just imagine what this, because the brand of Onitsuka was called Tiger. Imagine what Tiger shoes would do in America. This shoe would undercut what Adidas is doing in America. And then they ask him, how much do you think would make in a year? And he says, $1 billion. It's like, wow. All the Japanese executives, they pull back. Then they suddenly wake up, get out of the room, and they go and draw sketches. And they came back and presented the sketches to Phil Knight. And they asked Phil Knight, which one of this will do better? It's like, this and all that. This one is called the Lumberjack. I cannot remember what they're called. And he picks it and he says, how fast can you get this to America? And I don't know what they had there. And they said, I'm going to put an sample order of $50.
Yeah.
And after the meeting, they all bowed deeply, said, we are back in business. At that meeting, he got the single distributorship
for the
Tiger shoes. Couple of years, 1 year later,
is when the shoes arrived.
When the shoes arrived, the guy did not have enough money to buy them, but he had the guts. He went to it's called Bauman, and he signed. They were able to get a deal to give shoes to universities. And that was 1964. 1964, he funded Blue Ribbon Sports. What's it called? Blue Ribbon Sports Racing or something of that nature. And 7 years later, he got rid of Blue Ribbon and he became Nike. And I just wanted to go back to that story because it was all a matter of confidence. If it was not for that meeting,
fake it till you make it.
He faked it until he made it.
Fantastic. So there are some lessons that Phil Knight, I think, can offer us from his biography. Which is one of the ones I took away was fail fast. Right? So he says wisdom is an asset. He said that if Nike were to fail, he hoped that it would fail very quickly so he could take those lessons and move on to the next venture. And it just speaks to his personality and his resilience. A lot of what people don't know about Nike is that he spent a lot of his business life in debt. Banks were dropping him left, right, and center. So he literally was a guy who was like, we have to keep going, right? And he would say, if it's worth shooting for, if Blue Ribbon were to go bust, I'd have no money, I'd be crushed, but I also have some valuable wisdom, which I could apply to my next business. So fail fast, fail quickly, move on, right? And then his next thing was to have a growth mindset. He said that if you didn't have the courage, if you were always running away from the things that were not comfortable, then you would never grow. And so you need that in order to succeed.
Absolutely.
And he also said that you learn and change your approach as you go. So as he failed, as things didn't work, I think he had issues with warehousing. He had issues with the quality of his shoes. By the time you see Nike now on Eliud Kipchoge, having like running technology. I mean, he has perfected that over years. And then his thing was seek a calling and not a career. So most of us go into business or work just for the money, just to pay our bills. But Phil was passionate about the power of running and the power of sports and what it could do for you. And I think he's also was an avid runner. Like if he had a problem, he would go out and just jog and figure out his problems. And Phil made almost no profit in the first few years, which I think is really important to take away from this. That your business doesn't have to do well immediately. And I think there's that tendency to...
That really preaches to especially young people who want to get rich quick.
Exactly. And also he created an impressive circle of trust. So he was very harsh to his employees because he was pushing them to sort of always be on their best behavior and also just to do for the company like it was their own. His last thing was, don't tell people how to do things. So Phil had a hands-off leadership style. He would never respond to emails or phone calls. He was one of those. He just let you sort of get on with it.
No micromanagement.
Exactly. Which sort of throws and defied a lot of views of traditional management. He allowed people to solve problems by themselves. So tell them what to do, but not how to do it. Which I think is really important. And this, of course, starts with choosing the right people. So I think we could learn a lot from him.
Beautiful.
Oh, we really can. Fantastic book.
So that was our final thought for today.
I can see why you really like it.
I know. And it's easy to sell something when you believe in it. Absolutely. That's why Nike is such a huge brand. Well, we hope you have a Merry Christmas tomorrow. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pan Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a good evening.
Merry Christmas.